What's up, Reef Fanatics? Welcome back to the Coral Reef Talk podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about 5 common mistakes that you might make as a beginner in the reef aquarium hobby.
Absolutely.
Levi, how are you doing?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. Last night I had a bit of a scare, but we'll jump into that in just a moment. But yeah, today we're talking about 5 mistakes that are pretty common in the hobby, especially if you're brand new to the hobby. The Coral Reef Talk, we have a lot of viewers that are in their first year in the hobby, maybe first year to 2 years. So they probably have been going through some of these mistakes or experienced them. I know that I have in the past, as well as I'm sure you've dealt with some of these mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all have, like, if we started from the beginning, like everyone, you're gonna have issues. You're gonna run into problems. Even like along your reefing journey, you've been keeping tanks for years. You're gonna run into things that just happen or pop up out of nowhere. So yeah, we're gonna dive into a few of those today and kind of explain what you should do and what you can do to avoid certain issues and such, just to help you guys that are definitely first starting out, and even people that have been in the hobby a while. So
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes surprises happen, and not all surprises are good surprises. Like I mentioned, I had quite the scare last night. I came home to this right here. So if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you can see that I have a burnt up LED driver power supply that's controlling my lights. And it was attached to the inside wall of my aquarium. But it charred it, dude. It was like, I am surprised that it didn't get much worse than this. Like, this could have been the entire tank engulfed in flames, the entire house catching on fire. Like, it could have been really, really bad. In my 12 plus years of reefing, I've never had this happen before. Pretty insane.
Yeah, definitely scary.
Yeah, so to set up the story a little bit, we were out for the day, hanging out, just the family, having an awesome family day. We get home, and we just stopped at home briefly to get ready to go back out for dinner. And that's when I kind of noticed a funny smell, like burnt rubber, plastic smell, plasticky stench. But for whatever reason, I did not tie that into the aquarium. Because I don't know, in the moment we were trying to get ready, I was like, oh, the house smells weird. What is that? We just had work done on our AC and stuff before, so I don't know if I really wasn't thinking about the aquarium. I was just trying to get to dinner. So we went out to dinner. We were gone for an hour or so. We come back, and it's late at night, and I'm like, that's weird. The aquarium lights have been off. Seems like the whole day. Why have they been off? So I go over, open the cabinet, and I see this.
Wow.
Complete charred. So very, very thankful that however big or small this little fire was, it put itself out. Because you can see it's burnt all the way up there too, even underneath, like where the tank's sitting on. So yeah, that could have been bad. It also fried my Apex display, so I no longer have the display for the controller on the tank because that is fried. Everything's burnt to a crisp.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, maybe since we're talking about mistakes, I can't imagine outside of mounting that controller on the inside wall of the aquarium, that I don't know, maybe that was my mistake. But I don't know if the driver blew up or if something ignited, because the driver actually gets pretty hot and then a little fire started on that. I don't know exactly what happened. Like I said, I came upon this late at night. So, but very thankful that nothing else happened. Very thankful that the house did not catch on fire.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's some craziness that's been going on over here last night. But how are your tanks doing?
Doing all right. All the nano tanks are doing great. The little Predator tank's doing well over there. The Caribbean tank and the Deepwater tank kind of running into some issues right now. Um, Doing some stuff like I wasn't really thinking like or knowing exactly what would have affected them. I couldn't put two and two together at first, but I finally realized that I was using some dewormer to deworm some of my fish because a butterfly fish that I had definitely had some worms. It wasn't like gaining any weight. It was nice. It was skinny, but it was eating a lot, like crazy. So I'm like, okay, there's definitely worms in this fish. So I conversed with some other people that I know in the industry and stuff, and they recommended something to try, and I did that. And with the just a couple amounts of it, I mean, I don't think it would have mattered, but I used it and dosed it quite a bit. How I did it was I enriched the brine shrimp with the dewormer, fed it to the fish, and no issues for like a month. And then after a month, I started to notice something. I was like, something looks a little off here. Like the gorgonians look a little off. So I started doing a couple bigger water changes, more than I normally would do, like 50% water change one day, just so okay, like that should fix it. Didn't notice any difference really, and I kind of started putting two and two together and thinking, I'm like, okay, maybe it's like because I was putting too much of this dewormer and feeding the fish too much of the dewormed brine shrimp. So yeah, I think that's definitely what was going on because I was talking with one of my other people that I know in the industry. The product has a certain ingredient that ticks off soft corals. So that was definitely hard to hear. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think we figured it out. So now I'm just deciding on what I need to do to tackle the issue. And even if I need to probably reset up my tank and tear it down, clean it all out and just restart fresh, which is a lot of work. And it just stinks that I'll have to do that if I do that. But we'll see. I mean, some of the gorgs are starting to look quite a bit better, but there's a few that completely just went away. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what I need to do.
Yeah, for sure. That is tough. I mean, anytime you are dosing something in the tank and you come across something that has I don't know, an ingredient in it that you didn't know about, and then something like this happens. Yeah, catastrophic.
I mean, realistically, in my I should have known. Specifically, I should have taken that fish out, put it in like a little quarantine system, and fed it that brine shrimp. That way, I didn't have to throw all that stuff into the other. I was just thinking in my head, okay, like I'll deworm this fish, and just in case any of the other fish have worms, it's not going to hurt that they eat these because all the fish are doing great now. They look amazing.
Yeah.
But I definitely probably should have just taken out that fish, put it in its own isolated aquarium, and done it that way. But I didn't, and I learned a lesson there. So
yeah, and that hits on what we're talking about today in the episode is we're talking about 5 mistakes, but there are plenty of mistakes that we all make at whatever level you are in the reef aquarium hobby. And sometimes things just happen. And so we're going to get into those. One of the big ones that I think that beginners struggle with is rushing the cycling process. So if you're brand new to the aquarium, you're setting up your very first tank and you get overexcited, right? You get excited, you want to add fish, you want to add corals. And if you add fish and corals too quickly before the tank's properly cycled, it can lead to a variety of things, but poor water quality, stress, and even dead livestock.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm a person that did this when I first started out quite a few years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I set up the tank. The tank was up for a couple weeks, and I was like, I got to get something in here. This tank's so boring right now. And I did, and I learned from it. But I think it was a Watchman goby and a pistol shrimp, and the Watchman goby didn't last more than a couple days.
Yeah,
and it was just a bad mistake on my end. I learned my lesson, never did it again. But yeah, I definitely like we just mentioned, when you're setting up a tank, just you got to be patient. That's going to be where your success comes from. Just being patient with the system, waiting until it's ready for organisms to be added to the tank. Because if you're just set up a tank and start throwing stuff in there, your bacteria levels haven't built up enough to be able to consume all the like the levels of ammonia and all the stuff that your fish are putting off to put that nutrients through the nitrogen cycle. So yeah, I mean, just keep that in mind. Just be patient. I mean, there's ways that like people say like, oh, you can jumpstart your tank with this bacteria stuff, and I've tried those products and I've not been very successful with them. So I don't entirely recommend setting up a tank one day, dumping in all this bacteria, and then throwing some fish in there and being totally fine. Because I don't think, like, in my opinion, there's no way that's just going to happen that quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of just watch the tank now and see it goes through, like, the quote unquote ugly stage. You'll get some like diatoms and all those dinos and all the nasty algae that come in, and then all of a sudden your bacteria builds up to the point where it can absorb all those excess nutrients, and that algae just dies off because it has nothing to feed off of because your bacteria is built up. And then you can test your tank from there and kind of see where your levels are at and go from there. So that's
bacteria is a huge thing. You want that beneficial bacteria to build up so it can compete those other things in your aquarium. Like you mentioned, you're going to go through the phases of diatoms and all the things that kind of the algae and everything that's going to blanket your sand bed, your rocks. And then once your bacteria is enough to take care of that, then your tank's going to start looking good. But I mean, knowing the process too, right? Like getting that nitrogen cycle started of testing your ammonia, your nitrite, your nitrates. In the beginning, you want to test your ammonia, and you're going to test that until you see a lot of ammonia build up, and then you're going to see nitrite. And then once you start seeing nitrates, that's when you test again, test your ammonia. You'll see that at 0, your nitrites at 0, and then you'll start seeing nitrates. And then by that point, you know that the cycle is going, and you can start adding some things to the tank. So you don't want to do that before, because you don't want to throw in fish with ammonia in your aquarium. Your fish are just going to end up dying.
Absolutely.
Like even if they're a hardy fish, you still don't want to throw a fish in there with ammonia. It burns their gills and stuff, so it's not good for them.
And like I see people doing like, oh, you could throw a damselfish in there, they're invincible. And then half the time down the road, that damselfish ends up becoming quite aggressive, and then they're like, why'd I put it in there? Now I got to get it out.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I want to mention is like when your tank is cycled, don't overload it all at once, because your bacteria levels aren't going to be able to keep up with the amount of bioload you just threw in your tank. So start off with a couple fish at a time, maybe. Smaller fish, you can probably do a couple more, but if you're adding larger fish like tangs and other box faces and stuff, I mean, you definitely want to be patient. Let it run for a few weeks with that fish in there, and then maybe add another.
Then add something else. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip. It really is a patience game, and patience just means that you are taking things slow and watching them progress, right? So the very beginning of my reefing journey, I started my very first aquarium with a piece of table shrimp, right? And that took weeks and months to get that thing cycled. And you put the shrimp in the tank, you let it decay. It smells really bad. Bacteria starts to bloom. And now they have all the bottled bacteria stuff that is not exactly instant. It's still a process. But yeah, so don't move too fast on the cycling phase. Don't rush that. Make sure you are testing your tank. How often should they be testing in the very beginning?
I probably go with like twice a week, maybe, or even weekly. But I mean, on average, and this also just depends on the system and the size of the system, etc. Usually, it's on average about 6 weeks for a typical cycle. And there's quite a few that cycle within less, and some that take a long time. It also starts with how you like set up your tank too. If you're going to use something that has beneficial bacteria like live sand or live rock, that can help boost your like cycle quite a bit.
Yeah, you can get a tank with some dry rock and some sand, and then just get a little cup of live sand that has beneficial bacteria and just drop that in and jumpstart it. Or you can completely go 100% live rock and live sand, and that will really jumpstart your tank. And if you have any questions about that or want to see that happen in process, you can check out the 10-gallon nano tank build videos where I showed that testing process of testing a brand new tank setup with live rock. So that definitely helps out a lot.
Awesome.
But yeah, so the next mistake number 2 is inadequate research. So not researching the specific needs of the species that you want to keep. It can result in incompatible tank mates and inappropriate tank conditions. And so definitely with the compatibility, I would say you want to look up the compatibility chart. We also have a video about fish compatibility too on the channel, so you can pull that up. Maybe I'll link that in the description below. And also, I know sometimes I mention there's a link in the description. I completely forget about it. Forgive me, I'm human. But I will try and get that link in the description below. But yeah, inadequate research. What do you think about this mistake?
Yeah, I'm definitely keen on this because, especially when I used to work retail, we'd have a bunch of people come in and they'd ask us questions, and then they'd like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this fish. Usually we'd test their water and stuff, like specifically. But, I remember this one time this lady came in. She has a saltwater tank, and she bought a clownfish, and she showed me pictures of her quote unquote saltwater tank. She brought it. She must have brought it home, and she came back the next day and said, this thing lived for like 20 minutes and then it just died. And I'm like, that thing's been with us for months. I don't know how it would have died unless something's crazy wrong with your tank. And so she shows me a picture of the clown in a goldfish bowl.
What?
In a goldfish bowl with a goldfish.
That's
and I'm like,
insane.
that is like, but the funny thing is she has a saltwater tank. Like she has like a 55-gallon saltwater tank. It's never had issue. Like, but she put a clownfish in with a goldfish, and I'm like, I didn't know what to think, and kind of, we definitely didn't credit her for that because I'm like, I feel like she should have known, like, okay, like that's obviously a saltwater fish.
Saltwater fish.
Saltwater's on this side of the store, freshwater's over here. Like, I don't know. That was some of the most crazy experience that I've had with people with that specifically. But besides that, yeah, definitely do your research. Different fish have different care requirements.
Yep.
Different tank size requirements. Yeah, just keep that in mind. Some fish come from deeper water. Some fish come from shallow water. Like, there's a lot of different factors that will play into seeing if that specific fish, invert, or coral is right for your tank.
Yeah, and something I like to say all the time is if you're brand new to the hobby and you're setting up your aquarium, you want to research what you want to put into it ahead of time. I know that sometimes I've done this as well. I'll go into a local fish store and I'll walk up and down the aisle of fish and I'm like, oh, that's a cool fish. Let me see. Can I keep that? And yes, you can do some quick research at the store. That's fine. I think that's okay to do that. You're researching before you buy. Pull up something like Live Aquaria. I use that a lot to research some fish. But if you know what you want before you get there, you can alleviate that temptation to get something like, oh, what is that? What is that? That way you're not buying something that you're not really sure about. And then you end up putting it in your tank and it attacks your fish or something, or just causes problem and super aggressive. So that's really important too, is knowing what fish are aggressive and what type of tank you want to keep.
Yeah, and the other thing is like keeping a reef tank, keeping like a fish only with live rock tank or whatever. Different fish, are quote unquote with caution, for reef safe. And you always got to take that in consideration before buying a fish, because you might buy that fish. Some people might have no problems with keeping that fish in a reef tank. And some people might get a specimen that's going to pick at corals like crazy. And that goes for more than like angelfish and other different kinds of quote unquote, mostly non-reef safe fish. But even like tangs and even certain species of damselfish will actually go after your corals. And I always think it depends on just the specific specimen. Different fish have different appetites, even in the same species and genuses. I mean, they're going to go after different things. They develop tastes for certain things. I mean, it's kind of just like humans; they like different things. So you just got to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and not only with fish, right? You should research what corals, inverts,
everything.
corals, different lighting requirements for corals, different types of corals, LPS, SPS corals, different like SPS corals. You really need to hone in your skills as far as keeping your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, all those levels in a nice stable range, your lighting requirement for those. So just researching these before you jump into it and knowing ahead of time, I think will set you up for more success than just showing up and buying a whole bunch of corals and throwing them in and just seeing what happens, or throwing a bunch of fish in and seeing what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So make sure you do your research, because inadequate research can lead to problems. So
Definitely.
Levi, I'm super excited to announce the brand new Coral Reef Talk t-shirt. And real quick, we have a video, so let's check this out. What's up, Reef Fanatics? I'm excited to talk about the brand new limited edition Coral Reef Talk logo t-shirt. Now, if you've been following the channel for a long time and you're looking for a great way to support what's going on with the Coral Reef Talk, go ahead and get the new limited edition Coral Reef Talk logo t-shirt. You guys voted on it. I posted in the community tab, would you like a logo t-shirt or some kind of graphic design tee? And you guys voted for the Coral Reef Talk logo t-shirt. Now this is a limited edition t-shirt, and what does that mean? There are only a limited amount of t-shirts available. So if you want to pick up your Coral Reef Talk logo t-shirt, you can head on over to TheCoralReefTalk.com/shop and you can purchase your t-shirts there. They come in the graphite gray and the royal blue. So whatever you're doing, head on over to the link in the description right now, pick up your t-shirt. It will mean a lot. It will help support the Coral Reef Talk and all the videos and everything that I do for you guys in the hobby. It would mean the world to me if you check out the Coral Reef Talk shop today. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That is the Coral Reef Talk t-shirt right here. If you want to pick up one today, you can head on over to TheCoralReefTalk.com/shop. Pick up, look at this t-shirt. What do you think?
That's awesome.
This is the graphite gray. Awesome t-shirt. This is super soft. It's made by Sunday Cool Tees. I don't know if you've heard of Sunday Cool Tees, but they make super soft t-shirts. And so they're making the Coral Reef Talk shirt. So if you want to get one, CoralReefTalk.com/shop. Go ahead and check that out. So Levi, now we're going to jump into our scientific segment of the podcast. This is a segment I'm always looking forward to. What do you got for us today?
So today we have the yellow assessor. Now you don't see this too often in the hobby as it comes from Australia. So it's going to be an expensive fish to import. It's just going to be expensive in general, but it does have some great color. It's going to have the bright yellow body with like orange stripes on their top fins, known as the yellow assessor or the golden assessor. One thing I definitely like about these, especially when we get them in at my work, is they literally will swim upside down. That's because they're collected in like caves and crevices, and they hover upside down, just like a royal grandma. But like if you get them into a tank where there isn't many ledges or caves, a lot of times they develop just swimming up normally like a normal fish. Same with like royal grandmas that we see in the hobby quite a bit from the Caribbean. They do swim upside down as well quite a bit in the ocean. So just keep that in mind. Give it some caves and some crevices, and it's sure to add some nice color to your aquarium. And there you go. The yellow assessor flaviensis.
Awesome. That's a really cool fish.
Yeah, super cool.
I saw a hippo tang at the Florida Aquarium. I believe it was. He was just swimming upside down in loops.
Really?
Pretty cool. I was like, is something wrong with this guy? No, he was just having fun doing upside down loops in the aquarium. But that's cool. Yeah, that's an awesome fish. All right. So moving right along, we are on common mistake number 3 right here: insufficient flow. I think this is a big one.
It is big.
Not providing adequate water flow can cause detritus buildup, poor oxygenation, which is detrimental to both fish and corals. Yeah, creating dead zones in your tank. You're not gonna, well, you're not gonna get the right amount of water flow to bring the nutrition to corals, to kind of break that layer where the nutrition can reach the corals for them to eat. Oxygenating the water, very important. Dead spots, if you don't have the right water flow and you have dead spots where there's like low or no flow, you're just going to build up detritus and just gunk, and it's just going to pollute your aquarium.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a big fan of flow, especially with me keeping like SPS, or not SPS, NPS corals.
Yeah.
They enjoy lots of flow and lots of food. So flow is definitely a big thing for me. Just keeping everything moving, especially with even the photosynthetic organelles, in the wild, they're waving back and forth like crazy. So I enjoy some flow in all of my tanks because I just think it's great, keep things moving, because in nature, they're moving back and forth with the waves all the time. It's pretty cool just to see what flow can do for your corals. I've had corals in the past where they just don't look the greatest where they are, so I adjust the flow a little bit and they fluff up and they start like expanding more. It's pretty cool. So definitely flow's a big factor in any aquarium, just keeping things moving, keeping that detritus off the bottom, keeping things stirred up, and keeping oxygenation for the fish, just helping with that as well.
Yeah, flow for your entire tank is beneficial because you don't want things just settling on the rocks. If you have adequate water flow in your aquarium, that's going to save you the headache of maybe getting a turkey baster in there and blowing off all the rock work. You may have to do that from time to time anyways, but if you have no flow, then stuff's just going to build up and build up. So yeah, definitely more water flow than you think too.
Yeah.
Because even with my aquarium, I'm discovering that I should probably add a little bit more water flow to the tank. Even though I like the pumps that I have and they're doing well, but I think I could still add more, especially if you're going to graduate from soft corals all the way up to like SPS corals that really like that intense flow. And I like what you said. In nature, in the ocean, just think about the water flow and the currents that are hitting these corals all the time, and that are just going across like the sand bed and keeping things in motion, right? So you can add more water flow than you might think to your aquarium, and it's just going to benefit your corals.
Absolutely.
So coming up here next, I think this mistake right here, mistake number 4, this is probably one of the most common mistakes that maybe beginner hobbyists do, is using tap water, not using purified water like RODI water. This can definitely introduce unwanted chemicals, nutrients into the tank, promoting algae growth and stressing out your livestock for sure. If you don't know why you can't get rid of algae in your tank and you're using tap water, that could be what's fueling it.
Absolutely. And I see people do this all the time, and especially when I used to do retail maintenance, we'd get certain people that would top off, like if they ran out of like roadie water from the shop or something, they'd start using tap water. And I recall this one place, we'd always dump the water down in their bathtub, and their water, like in their bathtub, was like kind of had an orange tint to it from iron in the water. So they had a major hair algae issue, and they just like, they'd call us, oh, we ran out of RODI water, and they didn't ever like come into the shop, and we'd always bring them extra, and I don't know how they ever ran through that much. But they'd end up using tap water, and I kept telling them no, because like obviously the iron is super high in their water, because you're getting that orange film on the bathtub. So I'm like, I guarantee you guys that's exactly what's causing the major hair algae outbreak. Maybe a little bit of nutrients, but the iron is just gonna fuel the growth of that hair algae. So
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention like chlorines, chloramines, metals in the water. If you're trying to keep corals and you're using tap water, you're gonna have a tough time because they're just not gonna like that.
Yeah.
Um, and in the beginning of my reefing journey, I used, it was kind of a makeshift RODI unit. It was like a DIY setup. Back then, I was doing a lot of DIY stuff on the aquarium. Which, if you're a reef hobbyist or you're messing around with aquariums, I mean, you're going to be doing some DIY stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I think that's the nature of it too, and it's a lot of fun to do DIY stuff. But back then, I was still learning about water quality, and I just didn't save up at the time for an RODI unit. So I was like, how can I figure this out? So I had like some activated carbon and like a mesh bag, had that, the water dripping through the activated carbon. So it was removing a little bit. I didn't have like my own DI stage. But I used like dechlorinator product. And I think there's a product called Prime that kind of
Yep.
you use to set up an aquarium. But yeah, I was just doing all this makeshift stuff to get my water the best that I could for my brand new 29-gallon aquarium. And I did that for a little bit. I'm sure I didn't strip everything out of the water. Like, it's recommended to use 0 TDS water. That's why I find it very beneficial to have your own RODI unit at home. That way you're not driving out to the fish store every time you need water. You can make it at home. Which that reminds me, I have to change my filters tonight. That's what I'm going to be doing, changing some sediment filter, my carbon block and everything. But yeah, so that is a big mistake in the beginning, is using tap water. If you don't have the means in the beginning to buy your own RODI unit, your local fish store, they will sell you that water, salt water and fresh water for your tank. But just know that using tap water, you're going to get that chemicals, the metals, the iron, like you were talking about, that's just going
Absolutely.
to algae growth, and it's just not going to be good in the long run. So, big takeaway from that: get some RODI water, get your own setup, and you'll be good to go. Now, this last one here, number 5, inconsistent maintenance, and I think we all kind of fall into this category at times. Infrequent cleaning, water changes, equipment checks. Like, infrequent equipment checks can lead to deterioration of water quality and equipment failure. So not
Yeah.
cleaning your pumps. Definitely water changes is a big one, because your water is gonna just get stagnant and polluted with how much food you're feeding and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, just everyone I think runs into this at a time, like while keeping systems and tanks. Just simply, you get caught up with life, you get busy, you get behind, you forget, like because you got so much going on. And I'm totally guilty of that. You know, I get going and I get so busy that I just completely forget. Well, I haven't done a water change in a few weeks. Like, so just I try to personally, set up a day out of the week to just make it happen.
Yep.
Usually it's Fridays for me. I get home. I have a little time before Elizabeth gets home, knock out some water changes, get the tanks clean them up. So that's usually what I do. But there's definitely weeks where I completely forget and get sidetracked doing other stuff because got things going on. But yeah, it's definitely nice to try to get a schedule so that you can give your tanks the best probability of success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're investing so much into the hobby. So having that schedule every single day or one day a week at least to do that
Mhm.
maintenance, do that water changes is good. I usually try to do that on Saturdays. But man, life sometimes with 2 kids, and it's just all the crazy activities and adventures that we go on. Like, sometimes it's hard for me to maintain the tank, and you'll notice really quick that your tank is not happy. It will let you
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
Uh, and so, like, right now, I'm in the middle of fighting dinos again. After already thinking I defeated them completely, but they're showing back up, and I have a nitrate and phosphate imbalance. So I've been taking care of that, kind of lowering the light intensity, and thanks to my aquarium almost burning down, the lights have been off. So I'm going to keep the lights off for a little bit, go through that blackout phase, add some Dr. Tim's like refresh and waste away and stuff, and see if I can kind of battle these dinos again. But yeah, if you're not doing keeping up on your maintenance, like I wasn't keeping up with my maintenance, you'll start seeing stuff growing on your sand bed. You'll start seeing that film algae on the glass. You'll start seeing the hair algae start to build up in your rock work. Just a lot of different ugly things that can come back. So stay on top of your maintenance and you'll be just fine. And even if you miss a week, you just don't want to miss months, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then on the equipment side, your pumps need maintenance too. And your circulation pumps, your protein skimmer. If your protein skimmer is full of gunk in the neck of the skimmer, it's not really working at its full potential. It's not really doing its job. And so sometimes you're going to have to take that whole skimmer out of your tank, give it a good cleaning, make sure the neck's clean, empty the cup, put that back in, take your pumps out, scrub them down. Some people clean them with vinegar and citric acid, I believe. You use that. And what do you clean your pumps with?
I usually use vinegar.
Okay.
It seems to work pretty good for me.
So. Yeah, same here. Vinegar solution with some water, let it soak for a little bit.
Makes it easier to get like that calcium, like calcified algae off of it. And it just kills all of the other random things that are growing on your pumps. But yeah, I like to use like a little toothbrush too to kind of get in between, get all the crevices. I try to keep my equipment quite clean. So I like to, take them out, scrub them with the toothbrush, get them all nice and shined up. But it doesn't last long before they're growing algae again and just getting dirty. So you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. And that's the nature of it too, right? I mean, it's a saltwater aquarium. It's living organisms, bacteria, things growing. So you're going to get algae on your pump and stuff. But for them to operate and function well, take them out from time to time, give them a good cleaning. But yeah, keeping that on a more consistent maintenance schedule is going to lend to your success in the hobby.
Absolutely.
So let us know in the comments below if you've done any of these mistakes or are working through some of these, or maybe you learned something that you didn't quite know about. Let us know down in the comment section below. And I do want to run a couple questions by you from some viewers here on YouTube. I have a question from Tactical Reef Keeping. He asked about his hammer coral, and his hammer coral is not opening fully. So he wants to know why is that? What could kind of help him with this hammer coral? Why is it maybe not opening all the way?
I mean, check your water quality first things first. And then maybe if your water quality is checking out, maybe take the coral out of the system, put it in like a small little container and kind of observe it. Make sure there's no like flatworms or any other different kinds of bacteria or just other organisms that are kind of eating at it. And then even watch your fish to make sure your fish aren't like pecking at it every so often, or there's not a certain fish that's irritating it. And then maybe just doing a courtesy dip, just dipping it in a kind of light solution just to kind of kill anything that might be on it as far as, flatworms and other organisms go. But that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely check your water flow too. You can probably increase your water flow, see if that helps out your hammer coral. But yeah, let's see. Okay, here's another question from Awesome Turtle 20. They want to know, would a small tank need any additional water flow? They're setting up a 5-gallon aquarium.
So is it like do they specify more than one? Or?
Oh, sorry. Additional water flow from like a hang on the back filter, right? So you put a hang on the back filter on like a 5-gallon. Do they need more water flow than that?
Potentially. I mean, this is a 5.5 up top here, Elizabeth's tank. We have the little return, which is aerating the water a little bit. And then I have one of those small white UNS surface skimmers, which skims the surface of the water, gets rid of all I know sometimes when you have a smaller tank, you get like oils on top that just kind of, are kind of gross. So that we'll get rid of all that, and then it's going to blow lower in the water column just to keep the lower side of the tank flowing as well, because usually the hang on the back filters will be pushing from the top. So it's always nice to have an extra flow kind of pushing around at the bottom just to keep things kind of circulating. And like we talked about earlier, just not having dead spots, that's going to definitely help you with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you wanted to, they do have the small Pico pumps and everything that you can add in there
Yep.
to keep circulation going. Let's see, one more question, and this is essentially about in the earlier episode we talked about refugiums and turf scrubbers and stuff. This question is from Rob Tuber. He said, "What about running a refugium and a turf scrubber in the same setup?"
I've done that before. I don't see an issue with it. I mean, you might even run into an issue though where you're absorbing so much iron that your algae will kind of just stop growing. And sometimes you might even run into the issue that you have no nutrients for your algae to like use to grow and absorb. So you might run into that issue if you're running both of those. I didn't really have that much of an issue because I feed my tanks a lot, you know. They're well fed, so there's gonna be extra nutrients. So I never really had issues with that. But some people that keep their tank really clean and don't feed as much may run into that.
Yeah, and years ago I had a 75-gallon tank where I had like two small sumps that I kind of connected together. So I had a refugium section and a DIY algae scrubber. So I was running them both as well, and that was probably my most successful aquarium. All the corals looked great in there. The display, once it got past all those ugly phases in the beginning, initially, it looked great. There was no algae in there because all the algae was growing in the scrubber with the turf scrubber and the refugium with the Cato. So different types of algae are growing there, your turf algae and your macro algae. But yeah, just look out for it stripping nutrients from the water. So as you're doing your tests, like Levi was saying, you might run into that issue, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to run them both.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the 5 common mistakes that beginner reef hobbyists go through when you're first setting up your aquarium. If you have any questions at all, let us know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for listening or watching here on the video podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode.
See ya.